Take us back 5 years. We're in the middle of a pandemic. The whole world stops.
Of course, the pandemic created a havoc in almost all passenger rail services across the country. So what we have been observing over the last 2-3 years is actually, in most cases, the ridership recovery is very encouraging.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to episode 2 of Inside Steer, Conversations with Experts. This is the series where we meet some of the people shaping Steer's work and leading through North America. I'm Herbert Higginbotham, Executive President of Steer North America. If you don't know us, we're a global consultancy. We support public and private organizations that deliver the critical services and infrastructure that move our communities and help people work better. I'm coming to you live today from Los Angeles, California. And joining me today from Boston, Massachusetts is Masroor Hasan. He's a senior vice president in our rail and transit space. Hey, Masroor, how are you?
Hey, Herb. Doing fine. Thank you. How about you?
Doing just great. It's beautiful today.
Thanks for having me here, but I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So everyone, together with Masroor today, we're going to explore what he's doing in the rail and transit space today. We'll probably talk a little bit about how he got involved and what he sees as his outlook for the market right now, in light of a lot of factors that are changing in our communities every day across North America. Welcome to the program, and let's get started. So, Masroor, I just want to start, tell us a little bit about, when we say rail and transit, when you sort of, get up and put your socks on every day and go to work, what is it that you're trying to do?
I mean, again, the first thing I'm trying to do is to, of course, win more work for the company in the rail and transit space. I think that is my first and foremost responsibility and my target. But in addition to that, of course, the other thing I really enjoy is doing the work itself. So whatever project we have, we work on that. I work on that. So it's not only the selling part, the doing part is also that attracts me a lot in the rail and transit space.
And in that doing, what's happening right now in the rail space? And I sort of, I say it is, having worked in the space myself now for quite a long time, we've seen other countries really advance high-speed rail. We've seen, those attempts and forays here in North America, both in Canada and the U.S. It feels like it's, in my view, Masroor, feels like it can be choppy at times in terms of, spurts and grunts in terms of moving forward. But we do see some progress along the way. I'm just kind of curious, as you sort of look at the industry in the space today, what's really keeping you up at night? What are really the types of problems your clients are thinking about trying to solve?
So, of course, I mean, as you said, we are seeing, some ups and downs in the rail industry, especially in the intercity regional rail arena or the space. There have been some, one of the big thing is the funding issue. There are some funding issues that are currently happening, especially coming from federal government. Some of the funds are definitely delayed. So what I've seen, I've been noticing is there have been also a lot of private sector involvement, not only in developing passenger rail, but also in the operations of heavy rail, especially in different jurisdictions, different geography of the country. So of course, the other thing I'm seeing and observing in view of the funding scarcity or funding uncertainty from the federal government, which have been, of course, traditionally the main funder, and which will continue to be the main funder, but there will be a lot of P3, many more P3 arrangements that are currently being discussed, so that some of the
public-private partnerships.
The public-private partnerships, exactly. Some of those funding issues can be actually subverted in some ways. So that's something that's happening quite a bit. We have already seen more private sector involvement in some of those development. We see that in back in West, in California. We see that in Florida in terms of just developing new service. But in terms of operating, there is even more in terms of, who are the operators, more private sector operators are being involved in the U.S. in terms of operating the passenger rail service in the country.
So more players in the mix. You mentioned, private partners. I heard you talk about states a little bit getting involved too. As more players get into the mix, what are both I guess the advantages and pros that can come from that? What are some of the things then that, clients today who are either, thinking about or planning or designing or even operating rail systems? What are some of the challenges, I guess, that are introduced with a more complex governance model?
I think there's a lot of benefits in more parties, more players being involved and coming into the picture. I mean, as I said, funding has been and will be the main issue in developing passenger rail. Um, so the more we have the private sector, the less we'll see the funding issue to be really an obstacle in a lot of places. So I think that's where the benefits of private sector or more players come into picture. I mean, it's even the state funding. There are some states, very few, who have their own mechanism of generating funds. For example, California being a prime example. But many states, most states, don't have that kind of funding mechanism that they can use to really either sales tax or any other mechanism to really fund passenger rail. They have to depend on federal government for that. So the more the private sector is coming into this industry, the better for us who definitely want passenger rail to flourish even more in the U.S. I mean, there have been some key developments, of course. For example, Amtrak has just started their new solar trains. They put them in service last month. I think we'll see how it goes, but it's been a long time coming, and that's something that's also very exciting in terms of passenger service in the Northeast, which is most probably the biggest market in the country at this point.
Got it. You talked about that Northeast corridor market, and long been sort of hailed, certainly in the United States as a great rail corridor. But take us back 5 years. We're in the middle of a pandemic. The whole world stops. Rail and transit as well. And in that comeback, as transportation starts to come back, and of course, everything's changing now with how we work, how we move. We saw these dips in the transit space, particularly in the regional and intercity rail transit that you work in, that has sort of lasted. What are you and the team like? What are you all thinking about? And what are you seeing now? You spend a lot of time sort of looking at demand, looking at revenue, helping to ensure that both public and private partners feel like there's, the expected value, I guess, I'm assuming, from what you're doing. What are you seeing right now in terms of demand? What are you seeing right now in terms of how people are using systems?
So yes, absolutely. I mean, of course, the pandemic created a havoc in almost all passenger rail services across the country. Intercity passenger rail for Amtrak's ridership and also urban transit. Most probably the urban transit got even hit harder than intercity due to almost no commuting and things like that. So what we have been observing, over the last 2-3 years is actually in most cases, the ridership recovery is very encouraging. For example, especially in intercity, Amtrak has recovered all its ridership and even more. So I think, they are experiencing record ridership and revenue. So that's very, very encouraging. Even many of the urban rail services have seen, quite a bit of recovery. For example, the MBTA, in Boston, where I'm based, it has actually shown very remarkable ridership recovery in its service. Having said that, some of those agencies have been more proactive and they have done more innovative, service changes and things like that. And MBTA being one of the prime example, they have tried to move away from a commuter rail system to a regional rail system. Instead of a peak day, one directional heavy services, they have come to a conclusion, and then they have actually implemented it of all day, both directional service, for example. So while the ridership has recovered a lot, in most cases almost completely, um, one one very important thing that has been observed is actually the ridership pattern has changed. So that's I think is a very important aspect. We are seeing definitely much more all day movement as opposed to just peak movements. Of course, a lot of things have happened in terms of work from home environment. Many of the workers are still working. I mean, not full time, but some of their days working from home. So that has changed. And we have also seen quite a bit of increase in recreational leisure travel as opposed to really work travel, because many of our clients don't, even need to have us travel for meetings and things like that. So that kind of movement in the travel pattern has been quite dominant since the COVID recovery has taken place. So the ridership numbers have gone up in most cases. However, the composition of the riders have changed considerably. It's not the same riders who are traveling before pre-COVID as opposed, now in the post-COVID environment.
That's really interesting. So, I mean, I heard in there, Masroor, nearly every component of the ridership market in passenger rail changing at some degree. Who's riding, where they're riding, when they're riding, why they're riding. That's fascinating. What's the advice when you're talking to clients? And feel free, tell me about one or two that maybe have a great story to tell. What's sort of the advice and the partnership that we're able to bring, that your team's bringing, in order to sort of cut through that, right? How do you sort of plan for life when it starts over from scratch almost?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's things have changed quite a bit as we just discussed. So I think one of the main aspect of our advice right now is we have to go to a more and more to a data-driven solution. I mean, again, we were using data all the time before pandemic as well, but the need is even more to really look at the current data post-pandemic situation. Because if you look at, I mean, in the past, we're looking at, data from 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago, even in the past. But that doesn't work anymore, right? Because the post-pandemic situation has changed considerably. So from that perspective, we are definitely advising client, to the extent possible, to the extent budget is available, to go into collecting more and more data in the post-pandemic situation. Not only the ridership and revenue, of course, that is available, but in terms of their composition, as we just discussed, on their travel patterns, in terms of their travel choices, so that whenever we are, for example, I'm giving an example of ridership demand forecasting here, looking at demand, we make sure that our choice is based on most recent up-to-date data and local data as much as possible, subject to, of course, budget constraints and time constraints and everything. So that is most probably the biggest suggestion that we are giving our client, that we have to move away from the data, the tried and trusted old data. We have to collect data, new data. And the other thing is also in terms of with the advent of more and more computing power and stuff, we are also trying to do more open source kind of work in terms of Python based code programming and things like that, so the client can actually have it easy for them in terms of how to put it in their own organization, how to use it in the future. So those kind of modifications are also something that's going on. But I think the main focus is the post-COVID travel environment, as much as we can replicate that in our day-to-day work.
Thank you. So if I can, we talked a lot about, you were talking about, the turbulence in the market now, even sort of rapidly evolving methods, new data, et cetera. That you've been at this game for a while, over the last, 20 years or so. As you sort of reflect back, are we in a more turbulent time now than we were 10, 20 years ago? Is it just different? Take us back maybe to, when you started your career. What was the world like then? And what were the types of problems that you were trying to solve then different or the same as they are now?
Yeah, it's 26 plus years now, but yes, it would love to.
All
Uh,
right, you got me beat just by a tad then.
so it's been a long time. I mean, in general, I mean, the kind of work we do, I mean, the problems are similar. I mean, it's not
Mhm.
that the problems has changed considerably. I think, as I said, the pandemic has thrown everybody, curveball after curveball. So that is where I think it's different in that sense that you have to really, I mean, I'll come back to that point again. Make sure that the current solution to any problem that any client has is completely a data, based solution and current database solution. I mean, in the past, when I started my work, or even before pre-pandemic, it used to, it was kind of steady state, right, for many years. So you could actually even depend on earlier data, which you cannot anymore. I mean, we've been only maybe 3 years out of the pandemic, not even that, maybe two full years. In some cases, I mean, maybe the steady state has not even been reached. In most cases, it has been, but in some cases, so that's I think that is the biggest situation. In terms of for the clients to really plan their services, to really make sure what kind of offerings they have on their passenger rail services, just to make sure that everything is completely oriented to the current condition. I mean, that is, I think, the most important point. Um, and and that's it. I think, but there are some also maybe some changes in the focus from the clients. So, for example, I'll give an example of the business case, right? 10, 20, 10, not maybe 10, 15 years ago, the word business case was most probably not even relevant in the US. I would only be hearing it from our colleagues in the UK. Oh, we do work in business case. I mean, but that has changed. I mean, in the US, for example, it's been very prevalent. Every agency, every client wants to really look at the case for investment, case for business case for each and every initiative that they take. Either it's service improvements or new service, you name it.
Has that sort of focus on the business case, do you in your mind, do you link that back to, the more, say the sort of the deeper involvement of the private sector, or the lack of funding and the need to really sort of validate the ROI on any particular investment? Do you link those together, or is it simply just how, how we've sort of evolved on the, I'll say, the strategic and analytics side, the financial advisory side, compared to some of the technical tools that you were telling me about before?
I mean, it's a bit of both, but I think it's more on the former, I guess,
Okay.
in terms of because the funding constraints are really putting a lot of pressure on the project proponents, the clients, and public sector or private sector alike. So, especially for public sector, for example, they really need to find out, whether there is a case for it. I mean, for any
Yeah.
investment or not, in more thorough way, as opposed to just looking at a very high level in the past. So I think that is definitely driving that, because I mean, a lot of projects, a lot of things are really competing for the same amount of funds that is available at their disposal. So as a result, they really have to make sure that there is really a business case for one project over another. So I think that is mostly driving the change, or I mean, the change has been there for some time now. It's not that it has happened in the last 2 years or so, but I think that is the main um, idea behind it.
Got it. Did you start your career in Boston? Where did you?
Yeah, I came here 29 years ago now, to
Mhm.
do graduate studies. And yeah, I mean, there's a bit of story there. I was doing my PhD, passed my qualifier, and
Uh-huh.
then I was completely burnt out with all the pressure of the qualifier examination and research and everything. So I wanted to take a break, and I went to my advisor and say I need a break, and he said, "Fine, I can take a break for 2 3 years." So I mean, I always wanted to do consulting.
Mhm.
just to take a look. And I went to join another firm, and I liked it, and I never went back. So yes, it's been you said, and never left Boston either. So yes, so 29 years in counting, 26 years in consulting and counting. So all in Boston.
As you sort of reflect on those 26 and a half years, is there any particular project that comes to mind, or even a couple that come to mind as just really sort of advancing, where we are today? Anything that you're really proud of?
I'll give two examples. One is what I just mentioned, that this whole Acela new fleet that were just put into service. I mean, not
Mhm.
fully into service, partially, last year in the Northeast Corridor for Amtrak. So we actually worked on that in terms of making a case for that. And Amtrak actually submitted a loan application, the REEF loan, um, to FRA and the federal government. And our ridership forecast was the basis of the REEF loan application. So the fact that the Amtrak entity, I mean, they actually got the full REEF that they wanted, the $2.4 billion,
Mhm.
which is the highest ever in the REEF loan industry, REEF loan history. It was, I mean, we really liked the way it just turned out. I mean, not only the whole, because the whole REEF loan was approved, but the fact that we are now seeing the new service into um, coming into picture. And I actually I'm planning to take it next month when we are going to New
Nice.
York. I'll see it myself. The other one is Brightline West, another private sector. And again, it hasn't come into fruition yet, but it's getting very close. We are hoping. So again, our team's involvement, and I was involved from the very beginning of that project back in 2010. It was one of my really early projects. I even went to the interview for that proposal. I mean, it has turned around quite a bit in terms of clients and stuff, because different entities have been winning that, have been owning that project. But I mean, it is actually, hopefully, it will break ground sometime soon. Hopefully, I mean, we'll see. But it's moving in the right direction. So those, I think, are really the two really just to jump out because of their fruition in terms of implementation, in terms of seeing the success.
That's amazing. I will say congrats on that, and I will say that as a proud person whose family rolls their eyes every time we ride a bus or a train that I had even a small part of, right? Like I get really excited. I share it with them, and it's rather, oh, Dad, what are you doing now? So, I want to hear about. I guess I'll see you soon in New York. So I want to hear about that Acela ride, and
Yeah, no, I am looking forward to it. Let's see. I mean, I've been taking a seller for a long time, and I'll be able to tell the difference between the old one and the new one. And I have heard some really good things about it, so I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, fantastic. Well, as we're about to close on our time here, I would love if you just can you leave us all with a bit of reflection, and maybe look forward. What's getting you excited and motivated right now every day, and where do you see, as you look in the next 5 to 10 years, where do you really see the rail and transit industry heading here in North America?
I think there is a lot more focus on rail and transit than, let's say, when I started my career, or when I came to the US. So, I mean, that is definitely very exciting in terms of more and more, as we discussed, private sector entities coming into the picture, more and more service to come into the picture, more improvements in passenger rail sector that we are seeing, new technologies are coming into picture. What we had been seeing in Europe all along, which is still in Europe. I mean, again, we are not there yet, no question, but there are some very positive signs that we are on our way. I mean, hopefully, to those kind of services that we see. I mean, again, we always know. I mean, US is a much bigger country, so it's we have to be very, I mean, careful about where those investments take place, where actually, as we just discussed, whether there's a business case or not for those. But it is actually moving in the right direction, with, of course, the funding issues and the current funding issues notwithstanding. I think we'll overcome these situations for, as you said, 5, 10, 15 years from now. I mean, hopefully we'll have passenger rail system to be really proud of. Again, when I say system, I mean, of course, it will be mostly focused on regionally. Most probably, given the countryside, it will not be a nationwide system, especially when we talk about intercity or regional rail. Other thing I'm really excited about, is just, on a personal level. I mean, the colleagues I work with. I mean, that actually really motivates me to come to work every day. I mean, I love working with the people that I do, and I have been working. I've been with Steer for 17 years now. So that is another on a personal aspect. That something is very exciting, and I think this kind of current hiccups in terms of fundings or current constraints that we are seeing, these are cyclical. I think it will change. And people are already seeing the benefit of passenger rail. I mean, I'm talking about just the passenger rail industry because that's where I operate. And I really feel I'm very confident that these constraints, these hurdles will be overcome. And if we look at the intermediate to long term future of the industry, I think I'm very hopeful about this.
Nice. Well, Ms. Rohr, I'm excited and hopeful for that future too. I would love nothing more than to be riding more trains as I dash around North America. I thank you for joining us today, sharing a little bit about yourself and where you see the industry going. And thanks everyone who was able to listen or watch episode 2 of Inside Steer, Conversations with Experts. This is Masroor Hasan and Herb Higginbotham signing off. Take care.
Thank you all. Thank you, Herb.